Gentlemen, I want to echo what Senator Rounds just said. I mean, a lot of times we get to the problem without thanking you guys. I'd like, just as importantly, for you to take it back to your teams as well, that it's not lost on us that we've lived in utter peace here in the homeland for quite a number of years. Even though we've been deploying, we know what's involved in that. So we thank you all for that. I have two concerns. I'm an old supply chain guy, so I've sat in your seat. I understand what you're up against. This didn't just start in the last couple of years. I mean, we've had 3 periods of disinvestment in the military in the last 50 years, the 70s and 90s in the last decade. But this time it's really serious because it comes on the back of the recaps that happened before then in each of those times actually started from a higher point. So the disinvestment in the military this time actually started from a depleted point to start with. We had burned up a lot of our equipment, deployments were longer, and we ended up in a weaker position before this disinvestment started. So I've got 2 concerns. One is our workforce, organic workforce, what I call your depot and your shipyard workforces. And 2 is the supply chain. The supply chain has 2 things, I think. One is your ability in your shipyards and depot to turn around maintenance. But the bigger one, in my mind, is as our platforms, and this is true across the board, whether it's air, sea, or whatever, I mean, the assets that we have, the major platforms are all maturing at very similar times. And yet the startups have been delayed such that if I look at it honestly, and we don't talk about this much, but we have a gap in capacity that's anywhere from 1 or 2 years in some platforms to as much as 10 years in other platforms. It's a major problem. The up-tempo that we're experiencing in the last decade contributes to that. So I have 2 quick questions. General Levy, I know you've talked about this last year in committee and in private about your workforce. And because of those conversations, I think in the NDAA last year, there was a direct hire authority put in place. So how long does it take you to hire a systems engineer, a mechanic, a scientist today?
That's a great question. Thank you, Senator. So first, I would like to say thanks for the direct hire authority that was signed into law in the
and where are we in implementing that?
So the OSD draft policy or draft guidance was submitted to the services on the 20th of March, required back to them on the 3rd of April. And then once they approve that, then the services will begin implementing the direct hire authority. And as you recall, it's a 2-year authorization. And so we look forward to coming back to you all in the future, telling you how the direct hire piece of this is working. So we aren't there yet because that's recently enacted legislation. With respect,
these are policies inside the service, correct?
Yes, sir. So enacted in the NDAA, signed in December. That's a new authority for all of us.
Right.
So OPM, I apologize. OPM had to write some guidance. They distributed it to OSD, who then has now created some guidance. They've asked the services to comment, with the comments being due on the 3rd of April. So I expect that we'll be able to have the guidance to do the direct hire in the weeks ahead.
So how long does it take you to hire those guys today?
So today, it takes, on average, 148 days to hire somebody. In fact, I pulled the numbers this morning because this is important to me, right? This is essential. The human beings that work on these platforms, whether they're engineers or jet engine mechanics or firemen or somebody who works at a daycare center, they're all equally essential.
Sir, when you identify it, that retaining somebody, and this is true in business as well as military, finding somebody and retaining them are 2 different things. You find somebody, if it takes you 148 to onboard them, you lose a lot of candidates during that process.
Yes, sir.
You have to. So you're perpetually finding new candidates to start another clock of 148 days.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's a disaster waiting.
It's very difficult to close that circle.
So I will tell you in business, to hire these people today is 30 to 45 days, tops. 90 days for a CEO, someone at your level in business today. If I started a search as a board member, it'd be 90 days. If I didn't have an answer in 90 days, I'd be after somebody's job. So this is how far out we are in terms of being competitive. So tell us what we need to do as you onboard that procedure. Please keep us involved, because this is one where you've got a great standard to look at, because it's the very places you're competing. I'm going to be out of time, but Admiral Moore, I want to get to one other question, and that is the supply chain. As these big platforms, the reason I want to ask you, you've got the aircraft carriers, you've got the SSBNs. These are major platforms over long periods of time. The federal government does not have a capital budget. We just don't. I don't know how we actually commit industries to build these huge platforms without a long-term plan. So the inconsistent start-stop of these budget conversations that we have in Congress Tell us the impact that that's having on this domestic supply chain for these major platforms. And you could talk about the air platforms too, the F-35, F-22, and the follow-on maintenance that's required to keep those things going.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for the question. I mean, a lot of times we focus most of our effort on this when we have budget unpredictability at the tier 1 yards, the people that are actually building the ships and the submarines or doing the maintaining. And I would tell you, if you're if you're a Northrop Grumman or an electric boat, and you've got the cash reserves to kind of absorb a little bit of that. But where it has a bigger impact is at the tier 2, at the supply chain, the people that are providing the cabling, the pumps, and the valves. And so the unpredictability in the budgets absolutely has significant challenges for us in terms of being able to maintain somebody that's providing a pump or a valve or you name it to our ship or a submarine. And they don't wait around long. If it's unpredictable, they'll go do something else because they're running in a cash flow environment that doesn't allow them to absorb losses for very long. And so it's certainly a major concern to us, and it's something that I'd like to focus on when we talk about the budget unpredictability. Is that these are the people that really get impacted, and then when they drop out of the business, it just means less competition, which it's kind of a vicious cycle, which drives our cost up in the end.
Thank you.